Hi, um, my name is Jess, and welcome to Pelvic Floor 101. Um, my name is Jess again, and I'm a yoga therapist specializing in reproductive health, women's health, specifically with regards to the pelvic floor. I talk with my hands a lot, and yeah, let's get right to it. Um, I hear my dog barking. Um, the pelvic floor is fascinating. Um, and just a little bit of basics about it. So the pelvic floor is a group of muscles that lie at the very base of your pelvis. And as you can imagine, these muscles work together to create actions such as urination, excretion, and play a role in vaginal health and wellness, as well as prostate and perineum health and wellness. But something that people don't really know about the pelvic floor, and I think is integral in understanding the function of the pelvic floor and how to rehabilitate it or work with it to create certain outcomes, especially within yoga, which I'll get into later. But the pelvic floor moves with the breath. So when we breathe in nice and deep, and notice I'm filling up my belly, my chest, my side ribs, and you can't see it, but I'm moving my back ribs. So it's this full torso expansion, and so I'm really opening up. And so what's happening is that lungs are filling up with air. And when the lungs fill up with air, the diaphragm moves down to make room for the lungs to be full, and those push down the digestive organs. So the diaphragm gently draws down, gently pushing the digestive and reproductive organs down. And so the pelvic floor has to accommodate that volume change. So when we breathe in, our breathing diaphragm looks like this, and our pelvic floor diaphragm follows a very similar shape. It's a little different, but pretty similar. And so as we breathe in, these two diaphragms gently press down, kind of flattening. So the breathing diaphragm kind of turns a little upside down, and the pelvic floor diaphragm generally becomes slightly flattened or horizontal. And as you exhale, on the exhale, they draw up to engagement. So breathing in, creating space and openness, exhaling, pressing out and creating engagement. And sometimes it can seem counterintuitive that on the exhale, we're engaging. Especially in yoga, we associate exhale with a release and softening. And so a nice way to think about this is that the body is constantly kind of like an airplane in the sky. The glass windows are there to prevent this kind of pulling out or pulling out of air. And so our body is a vacuum. It's trying to press out and keep the air out until it's allowed in by the breathing mechanisms, the muscles in the body that allow breath to move into the body. So exhaling, we keep engaged because we need to have this strong foundation or this strong barrier to prevent air entering the body until we're ready to inhale. A little bit more on that in a different episode, but just to give you some foundation, I think that should be sufficient. So the diaphragms are right about here, and they move with the breath. And so you want them to move with the breath. If you breathe and you barely move your diaphragm, you're taking really small inhales and really small exhales. It's not sufficient enough for movement, for experiencing life at its fullest, right? So when the diaphragm moves down, if the pelvic floor isn't supple and moving along with the breathing diaphragm, the organs in the belly can get kind of smushed or feeling this kind of pressure down. So sometimes what happens in the pelvic floor is that we're too tense. It's called hypertonicity, Hyper, tonicity. And it's when the pelvic floor is always engaged. This happens a lot. The other thing that can happen is that the pelvic floor is really loose and relaxed, and it's not moving at all, it's not engaging. And this is also really common. They have different effects on the body, they have different symptoms, they have different causes. And from both of these particular tone issues, different symptoms or issues can arise. So let's say you have overly toned pelvic floor or too tight, hypertonic pelvic floor. You may be experiencing constipation. You may be experiencing urge incontinence, the feeling like you have to pee all the time, but then when you go to pee, you don't really pee for more than 5 or so seconds. You might be experiencing things like vulvodynia or frequent UTIs. Those are all often symptomatic or issues that can arise out of a too tight pelvic floor, the hypertonic pelvic floor. On the flip side, you have the hypotonic pelvic floor. So when the pelvic floor is really loose, you can have possible prolapse of the uterus, so the uterus falling through the vagina and out of the body, or not totally out, but hovering in the vaginal canal. And you can also have things like frequent diarrhea or loose stool. And you can also have stress incontinence. And stress incontinence is when you jump up and down, or you laugh, or you cough, and you pee a little bit. And some women experience urge incontinence where they're just leaking, and there's no stress put on the body, but they're just suddenly leaking out urine. And these are all things that are common in the body. Like, these are all things that can totally happen to anybody. However, they're not normal. So just remembering that these things are things that can be repaired or fixed through things like yoga therapy. They can also be fixed or healed through pelvic floor physical therapists and other modalities. There's a lot of really awesome work being done with the female reproductive system and the pelvic floor in general. And I've got lots of notes here about what I want to talk about today. And so, yeah, those are the main basic points of how the pelvic floor moves, and some certain specific things that can occur in a dysfunctional pelvic floor. Yeah. And so let's do a little gentle breath practice. Let's kind of get a little bit embodied here. So find an easy seat or standing position, and if you're comfortable with it, take one hand to your belly and one hand to your heart, and just kind of ground your hands into your body. Take a few breaths. And begin to notice where your breath is moving into your body, or how your body is moving to receive the breath coming into you. Is it moving more into the chest, more into the belly, evenly into both? Or are you barely moving at all? Last breath in, breath out. And just kind of taking a mental note of where you were breathing right now. How were you sitting when you were breathing that way? And do you breathe like that often? And these are all questions and general inquiries we can take with ourselves on a regular basis. And I want to reiterate that there is no wrong breathing pattern. There are different breathing patterns that are right for different activities, different movements, different reactions in the physiological system, the nervous system. So I remember when I first learned or was doing yoga and going to a really hot vinyasa class, and we were taught to always use our ujjayi breathing. And I thought this was how we were supposed to breathe all the time, really loud and Darth Vader-y, where you constrict the throat and you create all of these tight binds within the diaphragms of the body. There's a diaphragm here, here, and at the pelvic floor. So using these 3 diaphragms, the ujjayi breathing creates this constriction and this tightness, and that's where that sound comes from. And those tight bandhas, those tight binds in the diaphragms, are just to create muscular engagement for stability to move through those challenging vinyasas and challenging movements we take in those power vinyasa classes. So like Ashtanga or rocket yoga or power vinyasa, anything like that. And I thought that's how I was supposed to breathe all the time. So I sounded like Darth Vader for a couple of months until I figured out it was one breathing technique that was useful and served that movement. It didn't serve all movements. And same thing goes with posture. How I'm sitting right now is serving me best in this moment. But let's say I'm sitting on the couch. It might serve me to kind of lounge back and sit like this. Different movements, different postures mitigate different breathing techniques. So we're going to talk a little bit about posture and the effect on the breath. So wherever you're sitting, I want you to start to slouch. So you're going to reach your tailbone, which is behind you. You're going to begin to reach your tailbone forward. And you feel your belly button pulling back, and you're kind of beginning to slouch. And you might notice that when you start to pull your tailbone under, I'll show you from the side, when you pull your tailbone under, your shoulders start to curve in and you're making a kind of C shape with the body. And notice how you're breathing here. See if you can breathe into the belly deeply. It should be, or it probably, not should, it probably is a little bit difficult to breathe into the belly, and you notice your chest moving more. So your belly is not really receiving this airflow. Your belly is being pretty static and compressed. So the pelvic floor isn't really moving when we sit like this. So you can imagine when you sit like this all the time, your pelvic floor might not move a lot on a daily basis, and it might become weak from immobility or from infrequent movement. So if your pelvic floor is weak, it can do one of two things. It can be kind of relaxed and loose, hypotonic, or it can be engaged and tight, hypertonic. Those are typically the two options and variations. We're going to do the opposite. And I have a tendency to sit like this. You might too. So you can sit with your butt back really far and your chest pulled really forward. So you're creating this opposite C curve in the spine, this kind of openness, like they call it like the cheerleader stance, like your chest is out and you're proud and your bottom is back and you're really open in the front of the body. And go ahead and take a couple of big breaths here. And begin to notice where your breath is moving towards or how your body is moving while you're breathing. I notice that all my breath is in my belly. And I feel it a lot there because there's a lot of tension here. There's a lot of lengthening that's happening in my abdominal muscles, and it's kind of pulling even further and stretching even further on the breath in. So I feel as though I can't breathe fully. So when I'm like this, my muscles in my belly are already really taut, and they're going to have trouble getting wider with the breath in. So come back to an easy seat or standing position. We're really working with sitting right now, but if you like standing and you know what we're doing, you can go ahead and do that. I like to sit on a blanket so that my hips are a little higher than my knees. And it just creates this, I'll turn backward. It just creates this ability for the spine to stack a little more easily on top of the pelvis. So the pelvis is really cool, and I want you to take your hands and we're going to palpate the pelvis and the ribs. And palpate means to just touch the body through with your hands. Yeah. So you're going to palpate your bones right here. These are the top of your iliac crests of your pelvis. We often call them the hip bones, which is a decent name. It's a little inaccurate, but that's okay. So you're going to touch the top of your pelvic bone right here, your pelvic point. And you're just going to begin to kind of feel around, feel how the tilt of the pelvis works in your body and how your range of motion is. And find that center place where the very tips of your iliac crests, your pelvic bones up at the top, where they feel really aligned and underneath the ribs. And when you do this, you'll feel the sits bones, the bony part just under your butt. It's the very bottom part of the pelvis, grounded firmly into the mat, the blanket, the chair, whatever you're sitting on. So you've got this very neutral belly, this neutral pelvis, and from there we can begin to stack the spine in a way that feels really neutral, or will feel really neutral, especially if you have a tendency to kind of arch forward like this or arch backward like this. So we're working on creating that neutral place. So instead of, like, I like to sit like this with my belly hanging forward, so kind of pulling it back into neutrality, your pelvis back into neutrality, and then begin to palpate your ribs. Find the lower parts of your ribs and kind of bring them into alignment. I have a tendency to pull my ribs forward. Bring them into alignment with your pubic bones, so they're just nicely stacked on each other. And when you do that, maybe you notice a little bit of engagement in your abdominals. And that's what we're looking for, this tiny bit of stability from our abdominal muscles. And this is where we want to be. Take your hands in anywhere that feels really good and give your shoulders a little roll up to your ears and then back and down. Once your ribs are pretty over your pelvis, your shoulders will most likely drop in line. But if you find your shoulders are still reaching forward and you're having trouble finding alignment, just begin to kind of work your shoulders back so they're stacked over top of the ribs, over top of the pubic or the pelvic bones. And then begin to check in with your head. Sometimes we have a tendency to kind of reach our necks forward. And gently take your first finger to your chin, and you're kind of pushing down and back. So you're creating this long line through the back of the neck, as if the very top of your head has a string and you're being pulled up by something beyond you. And just pause for a few moments and notice how your breath is in this position. Feeling your body move with your breath. Noticing what parts of your body, of your torso, are receiving the breath. Last breath in and out. And hopefully you noticed an even movement in the chest and the belly, maybe the side ribs and the back ribs as well, as your torso expanded and contracted, expanded and contracted. And to be clear, that does not mean all the muscles are stretching on the inhale and engaging on the exhale. Just the diaphragms, for this purpose of this talk, are releasing and stretching on the inhale, and exhaling, engaging, and finding a sense of contraction. Yeah. That's it for this first episode, and there's going to be a practice after this. So if you want to stick around and do the practice with me, go ahead. And if you would prefer to put pause, kind of digest this information and come back to the practice later, same, go ahead and do it. Hey guys, welcome to the first practice of the Pelvic Floor series. So in this practice, we're really going to focus on synchronizing breath and movement in order to create a bit more awareness of the pelvic floor, its movements in the body. And yeah, for this class, the only props you'll need are a strap or a scarf. I like using scarves sometimes because they're nice and soft. And if you have sensitive knees when you're on hands and knees in tabletop pose, go ahead and find a blanket to soften the weight of your body on your knees. And lastly, we'll be partially hands-free here, so if you have a wrist or shoulder injury, this practice should be really manageable for you. Yeah. But be gentle with yourself no matter what. There is no need to perform in a certain way. We're just here to feel and be with our bodies. Let's get started. So you're going to come laying on your back in constructive rest. So you're going to lay down with your knees bent at about this angle, maybe like 45 degrees, a little more, a little less, it's up to you. And then you're going to widen your feet apart about as wide as the yoga mat and drop your knees into the center. And go ahead and lay back, and you can either take your hands to your sides or one hand over heart and one hand over belly. And just pause here for a moment. Just feeling the breath move in the body. If you have any fidgets or wiggles, head turns that you need to take, go ahead and take them. When you feel ready, settling into a sense of stillness and softness through the body. Feeling your jaw release, bottom teeth away from top teeth. Your cheekbones soften. Of your eyes relax. And the forehead smooths out. The face is soft, gentle. And the shoulders are relaxed. Feeling how your breath is moving through your body. Awareness to the pelvic floor and to the very bottom of your pelvis. Noticing if you feel a gentle pressure downward on the inhale and a gentle lift upward on the exhale. And know that if you don't feel anything, that's okay. We're here to practice feeling. More breaths. Gently releasing your arms to your sides. Toe and heel your feet back to in line with the hips. So they're not too wide and they're not too narrow, but they're just in line with the hip bones at the bottom of the pelvis. Your knees are pointed directly up, and we're going to take pelvic tilts here. So on your exhale, you're going to pull the tailbone up. You're going to drop the low back, drop the low ribs. Create a bit of engagement in the belly. You're breathing in, you're going to lower your tailbone down to the mat. The low back lifts, the low ribs might lift as well. Exhale, pulling down. Make sure you're tilting from the pelvis as well. Breathe in, tilt the pelvis down. Exhale, pull it back. You might notice how the body is moving in synchronicity with the breath. Maybe you feel as though your movement is allowing for the breath, the inhales and the exhales, to be a bit more full, fluid, and embodied. Last breath in, breath out, and find a sense of neutrality. Maybe you take your hands to the very top of your pelvic bones and the lower ribs and find a way to get them in line. And once you feel neutral in your low back, your pelvis, your ribs, pause for a few breaths. Begin to notice how the body moves as the breath comes in and out of the body. You might notice that the pelvic tilts we were doing are happening still, even though we are being consciously unmoving. body gently moves in that same pattern to accept and expel breath. One knee at a time, or both knees. Hug them into the chest. Take a big breath out, pull it in. And either roll to your side and come up to a seat, or rock and roll front to back a couple of times, coming into an easy seat. We're going to come into this easy seat, and if you have a blanket and you'd like to sit on it, go ahead and take it underneath your hips, setting up your pelvis, your spine, your hips, your legs, everything, how we did before, into this neutral place. So the tailbone, the sits bones are anchored down towards the mat, towards the blanket. The very top of the pelvis is in line with the ribs, the shoulders over top of those. And the neck is long. The chin pulls up and back, or down and back. And we're going to begin with a couple rounds of Durga Pranayama with 3-part breath. Take a big exhale, let everything out. As you breathe in, fill up the belly, the side ribs, the chest, and release, exhale from the chest, side ribs, belly. So it's all working together to move. Breathing into belly, ribs, chest, exhale from chest, ribs, belly. Breath into belly, ribs, chest, exhale from chest, ribs, belly. Breath in belly, ribs, chest, exhale chest, ribs, belly. One more breath in belly, ribs, chest, exhale chest, ribs, belly. Finding your natural breathing pattern for a couple rounds. Just feeling the state of the body, the mind, the spirit. When you're ready, coming to a tabletop position, removing the blanket under your hips if you had it there, and coming to your hands and your knees. We're going to take a couple of cat-cows here. Just like the pelvic tilts, we're going to be moving in accordance with our breath. So as you breathe in, you're going to lift the tailbone, drop the belly, pull open the chest and heart. Exhale, tilt tailbone down, spine reaches up, chest curves down. Breathe in, tailbone lifts, belly drops, chest opens. Exhale, tailbone drops, belly lifts, chest drops. Breath in, tailbone, belly, chest. Exhale, tailbone, belly, chest. Go a few rounds at your pace, noticing how this movement accentuates the breathing process. Last one. And then come back to center and take a little wiggle out of the shoulders, the hips, just loosening up. Finding your neutrality again. So check in. Our neutral spine here isn't hammocking and dropping the chest down, but pressing the mat away from you, broadening the upper back. Belly button hugs to the heart, pulling the ribs and the hip bones, or the pelvic bones, in line with the pelvis. So the rib cage and the hip bones, or the pelvic bones, draw in line with each other as the tailbone reaches back. This is our neutral here. We're very strong and stable. You should feel a gentle engagement in your shoulders and your abdominals. And we're going to take spinal circles here. So you're reaching your ribs up to the side, down to the other side, and then back up. And so you're creating this up and down circle. So a lot of times I notice when I cue this, and it's okay if it feels good and you want to do it. That's not what I'm saying, that you shouldn't do it. But I notice that people roll around like this horizontally. And if that feels good, go ahead and do it. But know that what I'm cueing here is actually a vertical circle where the ribs are moving up and down. You're rolling the spine like a cement mixer truck, or as if your ribs were scooping the air around you. Go the other direction and just feel here. And then pause, take a little wiggle out, and come back to your neutrality. Take a big breath in, a breath out. Good. Now we're going to find pelvic tilt. So strong shoulders, so check in that you're not hammocking, and you're pressing down to broaden the upper back. Belly button hugs to the heart, your whole back is really still here. Your whole rib cage is engaged and stable. We're going to take pelvic tilts. So it's really subtle. I might exaggerate a little bit so you get an idea of what it's supposed to look like, but please know that your body will look and feel a lot differently than how mine might look or feel to me. Okay? It doesn't have to. Maybe it does look and feel like mine, but it probably won't. We're going to take pelvic tilts, and just remember that I'm going to exaggerate the movement just a little so you can get an idea of what you might be looking for in your body or feeling, but just know that your body might not look how my body does. So reaffirm your connection in your shoulders, your belly button to your spine, your ribs are in line with your pelvic bones. Your tailbone's reaching back just for now. On your breath in, the whole upper body stays still. You're tilting the tailbone up. On the exhale, the tailbone tilts down. Notice how I'm keeping my upper body as still as possible, breathing in, breathing out. Notice if there are spots that feel a bit tricky or sticky or difficult to move, like you're moving through a really thick liquid, or you're encountering barriers. And just begin to notice that. There's nothing wrong, just noticing. Breathing in, breathing out. Keeping the spine, the ribs really still. Breathing in, breathing out. 2 more. And relax down, hips to heels. Maybe you sit on the block. That was harder than it looks, right? Yeah. So that's isolating the pelvic movement with the breath. So we're really working and focusing on moving the pelvic floor to help create that movement, along with the other accessory muscles of the pelvis. Yeah. And now we're going to take pelvic circles. So similar to the rib cage or spinal circles where we're rolling around like a cement mixer truck, I want you to take a similar shape, but just isolating the pelvis. So strong shoulders, broadening the upper back, belly button hugs to the heart. You're long in your spine, but you're not tucking too much. You're just neutral. Ribs are in line with the pelvic bones. As you breathe in, tailbone reaches up. Turn it to the side a little bit, down. Other side, back up. Go a couple rounds. Keep your upper body really stable. Check in to know that you don't have to do this. You're not reaching your butt in these like great big circles. You're being really subtle here. Breathing in to reach up. Exhale to one side, down. Breathing in to the other side, reaching up. Keeping really stable here. This is kind of what belly dancers do. They're isolating the movement of their pelvis. There's a lot of muscle movement that has to happen for this movement to occur in the body. Other way. Other direction with the circles. Last one. And then find your child's pose. Take your knees a little bit further apart. Reach your hips back and reach your arms in front. Forehead to the mat. 3 breaths. Just feeling into your pelvis here. Noticing how your body is feeling. How your breath is feeling. And when you're ready, Making your way to your first downward facing dog, curling your toes under, reaching your tailbone up high. And know that if you're feeling like your shoulders or your back don't enjoy this posture or find it really challenging, you can always take this kind of pose and then reach one foot back and give the heel a press down so that you get a nice hamstring and calf stretch. Otherwise, go ahead and take your downward facing dog. And go ahead and pedal at the feet. Being really gentle here. 2 more breaths, finding some stillness. And gently tiptoe your feet to the top of the mat, lengthening your hamstrings as you move through. Coming to the top and finding a forward fold. Feet are about hips width distance. Bend the knees, hands to opposite elbows, and drop the top of the head down to the mat. One more breath in, a breath out. Slowly lift all the way up to standing. Give a big reach up to the ceiling. Breath in, and breath out. Come down, take a little wiggle. Nice. Come to the top of your mat if you're a little back, and step your right foot to the back. We're going to find goddess pose. You're turning your toes out about 45 degrees, and depending on your hip mobility, you might go more out or a little less out. Check in with your body. You're going to bend your knees, and your knees are going to point towards your middle 2 toes. You're kind of dropping in, and feel free to kind of bounce around or sway side to side, and just feeling your way into this movement, into this posture. And when you're ready, go ahead and drop a little deeper. Take one hand to heart, one hand to belly. Take a breath in, breath out. Breath in, breath out. You're squeezing everything in. You're engaging your inner thighs, your pelvic floor, your belly, and you're pulling up. Glutes are strong here. Breath in, you're reaching down, open hips, reach back a little bit. Exhale, zipper up. Breath in, breath out. A few more on your own, breathing in to lower, widen the pelvic floor. Exhale, engaging pelvic floor, lifting up. Feeling free to exhale through your mouth. 2 more. Maybe you can feel your pelvic floor working here. Coming up. Breath in, lower. One more time. Exhale, come up. Breathe in, open up to warrior 2 to the left. You're bending into left knee. Your right toes reach toward the right side of the mat. Your left toes towards the front. Relax the shoulders. You're creating a gentle openness in the front of the pelvis, an engagement in the back of the pelvis. And that means you're stretching your inner thigh here, a little bit of a stretch on the inner thigh here, not too much, more in the front. And then the glutes are both engaged in different ways. So just beginning, you can even touch your butt to see if it feels firm and to see if your bum is engaged. And then when you're ready, reach your arms long. Good, breath in, breath out. Last breath in. And as you breathe out, you're kind of finding that zipper sensation again. Inner thighs engage, pelvic floor and core engage. You're lifting up, arms reach high. Breathe in, lower down wide at the bottom of the pelvic floor. Exhale, lift. Breath in, lower. Find a wave here, a synchronicity in your body, a gentle rhythm. Couple more. Last one. Exhale, lift. Inhale, lower triangle pose. Left hand to left shin, right arm reaches up. And here, instead of stacking the rib cage and the pelvis, think about stacking the shoulders so you're not tilted down and dropping, but you're feeling buoyant in the chest. Your sternum, the center of your chest, is reaching to the right side of your room. Your legs are strong. Maybe your eyes look up to right thumb. Maybe they look down to left toes. There's no right place for your eyes to look. Take another breath in. Breath out. Breath in, reach all the way up. Turn all toes slightly pigeon-toed and forward fold. 2 breaths. Lift up halfway. Take your hands to your hips. Engage your core and lift up with a long back. Turn your toes out. Goddess pose. Take a breath in, breath out. Breath in, lower down. Exhale, lift. Breath in to lower. Exhale, zippering up, engagement in the pelvic floor. Breathing in to widen the pelvic floor. Exhale, lift and engage. 2 more. Breathing in and out. Inhale. Exhale. Last one. Exhale, lift. Open up warrior 2 to the right. Right toes to the back of the mat. Your chest is still facing the same side. And your left toes are pointed a little bit to the other side of the mat. Reaching down, your glutes are firm and strong. Your chest is open. Your ribs are stacked over your pelvic bone. Your eyes can look wherever feels good on your neck. 2 breaths. Exhale, lifting up. Breathing into lower, widen pelvic floor. Exhale, lifting up. Notice the movement is happening mostly in the right leg, not so much in the hips. Breathing out, breathing in. Waving through a few more times. Last breath in. Exhale, lifting up. Breathe in, triangle pose. Right hand to right shin, left arm is high. Stacking the ribs in line with the pelvis, the shoulders in line with each other, and eyes can look wherever feels good for you. Last breath in, breath out. Breath in, lift all the way up. Goddess pose. Inhale, come down. Exhale, lift. Breathe in, lower. Exhale, lift. Last one. Turn the toes in, forward fold, 3 breaths. Last breath in. Let it go. Lift up halfway, hands to hips, come all the way up to standing. Turn the left toes forward and step your right foot up. We're going to take chair pose for a few breaths here. So you're going to go ahead and bend your knees. And instead of typical chair pose where we reach our arms up and we find extension through the arms and engagement in our back muscles, which causes some lift in the front and in the core, instead we're going to reach our arms forward. Feel the low ribs pull down in line with the pelvic bones like we've been talking about, and your bottom is reaching back. Take a breath in, breath out, get low. Breath in, you're going to lift up, find an open heart, and exhale, come back. Find your rhythm here, breathing in, exhaling, coming down. Breath in, open chest, open heart, exhale, pull the ribs down, engage. Breath in to lift, exhale, drop. Couple more at your pace. Last one. Drop it down. Stay for 2 breaths. Soften the shoulders. If your shoulders are up by your ears, bend your elbows. Turn your palms up. Last breath in. And breath out. Forward. Pausing here. Take a couple of breaths. Last breath in. Big sigh. Lift up halfway. Widen your feet about as wide as the mat. We're going to find yogi squat. Your hips are going to reach down. Your hands come between or towards each other in prayer, and your elbows are in your inner thighs. Now, this can be pretty uncomfortable for some people. If you're lifting up your heels, take your blanket, and you can take your blanket underneath your heels, and this can feel really good and really stabilizing. So if you're doing that, go ahead and do it. If you want to sit on a block, go for that. If you want to stay up here, you can do that too. This is called camper squat. So drop down and see if you can allow your inner thighs to spread open. Maybe you close your eyes and allow your breath to really gather and pour into your low belly. feeling it widen and contract. Last breath in, breath out. Release your hands and your hips. Come all the way down onto your seat. Remove your blanket if it's there. And come onto your back, kind of how we were before at the beginning of class with our pelvic tilts. So you're coming down. Your heels are in line with your sits bones at the bottom of your pelvis. They're not too wide or too close, but just right, Goldilocks style. And from here, check in. Your fingertips should be beyond your heels. If your heels are really close, you're just creating less space for your body. If your heels are really far away, you're just making the work a little harder for yourself. So have your heels be just beyond your fingertips reach. We're going to do a couple pelvic tilts to refresh our memories. So I'm moving my arms so you can see my hips move, but feel free to keep your hands right here. So as you breathe in, your tailbone tilts down, your belly lifts. Exhale, you're curling the front body, tailbone reaches away from the floor. Breathe in, tailbone down. Exhale, tailbone up. Let's add some lift. Breathing in. And exhale, lifting the hips. Tailbone is reaching towards the backs of the knees. Breathe in, you're lowering down, lifting the low back, tailbone drops. Exhale, pull it in and up. Breath in, lowering down, revealing open pelvis, open pelvic floor. Exhale, lift, engagement. Breath in, release. Couple more at your pace. Last one. Breath in to lower. And find your Supta Baddha Konasana, the soles of your feet together, knees out wide, left hand to heart, right hand to belly. Another breath in. Big breath out. Use your hands to your legs, turn your knees back to the ceiling, and find your strap or scarf. You're going to wrap your scarf or strap around the ball of your right foot. You're extending it upward. So this is not where you have to be. You could be all the way, down here and still feeling a significant stretch in your hamstring. That's okay. Meet your body where it is right now. So your toes are reaching towards your face. Your heel is pulling up toward the sky. You're feeling a long sensation through the back of the leg. Maybe you extend your left leg down comfortably. Take another breath in, breath out. You're going to reach your right heel over to the left side about 6 inches. Keep your right hip down, and you should feel a lengthening sensation through the outer right leg. We're not lifting because our goal here isn't to twist. Our goal here is just to feel a stretch on the outer right thigh. If you really want to take the twist, you're more than welcome to. Last breath in. Let it go. And then gently opening up your right leg to the right side. See if you can keep your left glute down. So maybe you anchor it with blankets or your left hand, lengthening your inner thigh and your pelvic floor. Last breath in, breath out. Come back to the top. Pause here for 2 breaths, heels away from you, toes to your face. And gently release. Letting the leg drop down and taking a few breaths here, just feeling the difference between the 2 legs. Re-stepping the feet back in, extending left leg to the ceiling, wrapping the scarf or the strap around your left foot, and extend your left heel up your left toes towards your face and feel the lengthening on the back of the left leg. If you want to extend your right leg, go for it. Gently reach your left foot 6 inches to the right side, finding a lengthening sensation through the outer left leg, the outside. And then reach your left leg over to the left side, finding your inner thigh and pelvic floor stretch. Keep anchoring your right glute max down. And gently come up back to center. Take a big breath in. Let it go. Releasing the strap or scarf from your foot. We're going to find Shavasana. There's a couple things you can do. You can lay totally flat, just like this. You can take a blanket on top of your pelvis to feel a sense of grounded anchoring over your pelvis. Or you can turn and put the blanket underneath the backs of your hamstrings or your knees to help relieve the low back or SI joint discomfort. Lay your arms to your sides. And just breathe. Feeling the body. Feeling the breath. Staying for as long as you have time for. Knowing that this is the most important part of our practice.